That's one of the disclosures. I am not a chef. And so what, I just like to cook, and I like to have people try different things, because let them know that plant-based foods are really, really good. It's not just leaves. It's delicious if you cook it right and choose right. It's not a lot of ingredients that you need. So with this, all you do is saute your garlic, chop up the garlic, and there are no measurements really. No cashews. This is not a good thing. I apologize.
You had them a few hours ago.
I had them. Yeah, they're here somewhere. So we don't have the cashew milk.
All right. I'm going to let you.
You go on and talk. Yeah, you can go on. I'll go find. I'm finding these cashews.
So we started our farm, and so I talked to a farmer south of Madison here, and I said, boy, we have all this sand up there, and it's so hard to grow things. He goes, I don't want to hear about your sand. Because I have thick soil down here, and it rains all the time in the spring, and I can never get anything in the ground because I have to wait for the ground to dry up enough. He goes, that sand is good stuff, because you can get in those fields right away. So different farmers have different ideas about all that, but it is tough to grow in the central sand. And so, I wish I had my overheads here, but we'll work without it. So we started farming, and before we moved in April, and right there in April, in the first week, Jeannie saw this little ad in the paper, and it said, community meeting, come to the park this Sunday, there's a CAFO coming to town, and you need to come to the park to find out about it. And it was like, oh, CAFO, you know, combined animal feed operation, a factory farm coming to this area that we just moved into 4 days ago. And so we went to that meeting, and there was like half a dozen people there. And they were saying, you know, we're concerned about our lake levels. The Central Sands has many problems with lake levels at the moment. And, there's 15 years ago, hey, the cashews! 15 years ago, there was less than 50 high-capacity wells in the Central Sands. There are now 3,000 of them. And what that's doing is drying up a lot of lakes in the area there. And what that's doing, I just came, last March I went to the Capitol and went to the public hearing about the new bill about the water in Wisconsin and how it was going to be used. And I testified. And we're up against the potato and vegetable growers, and they're saying we need to grow potatoes and vegetables to feed the world. And my argument is, I'm a vegan and no one eats more potatoes and vegetables than me. So I'll talk about that. So I looked it up before I went, and we have 8 million acres in agriculture in Wisconsin. 4 million of those acres are in corn, feed corn. 2 million of those acres are in alfalfa, feed for animals. The remaining 2 million, the last 25%, is everything else that we grow in Wisconsin. The potatoes, the vegetables, the cranberries, the apple trees, anything else that we grow cultivated. So their argument that they need more water to grow more vegetables to feed the world is not a true statement, because what we're really growing is feed for animals. You can go to the website for the Wisconsin corn growers, and they proudly tell you what they use their corn for. 50% is used for ethanol. 37% is used for animal feed. 10% is used for, is exported for more animal feed to Minnesota or wherever. And 3% is actually what we eat. So, and that includes the corn syrup, high fructose corn syrup. Any way we use corn is food, 3%. So we can have 97% of our corn can go away. We can have that land back to nature. And here comes the tech guys. So I'm going to turn it back to Jeannie, and we'll see what happens on this tech.
So the cashews, I knew I had them, so we got them. So Stanley's going to be working on that, and that's going to be, he's sauteing his garlic. And, oh, go ahead. And now what he's going to do is beat up the, and you need a high pressure blender, unless, otherwise you just soak them in warm water for a few hours, and then, go ahead. It's not that loud. So the wine, if anybody gives you cheap bottles of white wine, it's great. Save it for cooking, because it really does good for the flavor on the Alfredo. Does everybody, has everyone gotten a taste yet? No? They're getting there? They're getting there. So what I'm going to show you while he's doing that is the chickpea tuna that you're going to be trying. So all that is a can of chickpeas drained, drained and rinsed. And you can throw them in, and just pulse them in your blender to give them, and you can mix them with white beans too. You can do half and half if you want a softer, more mushy type of a tuna. So then you'll mash that up. And then you will add your celery, chopped up onions, and the mayonnaise. And I make my own mayonnaise. Does anybody here make their own mayonnaise? Yeah? With oil or? Oh, perfect. Perfect. So we try to stay more plant-based. So we don't use much oil at all. So I make a mayonnaise out of tofu, lemon juice, a little bit of white wine vinegar, and it gives it a really good flavor. And that's what's in the chickpea tuna that you're going to be eating. And then you put the celery, salt and pepper to taste, and then a little bit to give that fish taste that everybody misses so much, a little bit of kelp powder. So, and it does give it an ocean type smell, and not much.
So we have dinners on our farm every Thursday night, and we have it's open to the public, and we get anywhere from 20 to 50 people who come. And there's 2 vegans at the farm, Genie and I, and we present them as plant-based meals. We don't we have no animals on our farm other than our cats, and
yeah, we got a lot of wildlife though.
We got a lot of wildlife, yes, of course. So. But we get a large amount of people who come in who aren't vegans, who aren't plant-based, who aren't vegetarians, and we prepare a meal. It's a set menu. It's whatever Genie decides the night before, and we whip up a meal for 30 to 50 people, because we don't really know how many people are coming each week. And it's just a great thing, because we introduce plant-based eating to a lot of people who would never have tried it. And they're coming because it's a dinner on the farm, they're on vacation, it's a great thing to do. You're up at your cabin and you're looking for things to do. So it's worked out really well, and we actually get some converts out of it, right, Jeannie?
Yes, and right now I have a little Amish girl working with me. She helps me on Thursday nights, and she's trying to explain to me, because they're very much into the dairy. So I think she's my next convert. I'm working on her. I'm getting there. So, yeah, because she gives me, and they're very Bible-based, but I know enough about the Bible that she can't beat me in an argument. So, no, really. So Stan, I just want you to see, he didn't add anything to thicken this cashew milk. And if you buy it in the store, it doesn't work. I tried it, of course, at my daughter-in-law's, and it didn't work. And of course, I was, but you got to use the fresh cashews. And then, has anyone seen the documentary, #1, Cowspiracy? Who has seen Cowspiracy? Oh, we need more hands than that. You guys really got to get that. And another one is called Plastic Oceans. Has anyone seen that one? That, when you watch that, you're going to quit using. So I tried to minimize. I mean, today we're running around all over because we had to use a different kitchen and everything with all this plastic and stuff. But I try to minimize, because you should watch that documentary. It's very, very interesting. So now this is all done, pretty much.
Jeannie, I put your menu up on the recipe up on the screen.
Oh.
So what you're making there.
Yes, so this is all done. So this is the chickpea tuna. But everyone always tells me, and they try to argue that too, that they don't have time. They don't have time. But you can, when you learn and rethink cooking, there is time. You might have to change your schedule around a little bit, but it doesn't have to be so complicated. And like I said, I teach cooking classes, but it's not teaching you how to chop and all these things and the fruit things. I just want people to eat healthy, make it simple so it's not burdensome, and taste really good. So it's already done. So you got your Alfredo sauce. And Russell was supposed to get red peppers to chop and put on. You can roast them. He didn't. But anyway, so it's very pretty when you roast some red peppers and throw on top of that and serve it as a meal. So that's pretty much. See how simple that was? We were late, but does anyone have questions?
All right. So what you need?
Hold on. I want to. What's that?
I didn't hear what you said was the ingredient in the chickpea tuna that for
Kelp powder to make it fishy. Yeah, right. And don't use a lot because it'll be too fishy.
But that's one of the things that the people who come to our farm, they're really surprised. They eat the tuna, and they cannot believe that it's not real tuna. It's that kelp powder really makes the difference. The chickpea tunas, when you the chickpea peas, when you mash them up, give you the same consistency of crushed tuna. And I mean, what is tuna salad other than mayonnaise and pickles and mustard with some tuna mixed with it? So you just replace that tuna with some chickpeas and you're ready to go.
This past Thursday, I went on the PETA website. That's for my dinners. It was a last minute thing, and I made the Sloppy Joe. Has anyone tried PETA Sloppy Joe? No. And I used TVP, which is a processed food, but when I have meat eaters, I go on and just cheat. So the TVP, textured vegetable protein, but I mix it with mushrooms. I crush up mushrooms and walnuts. Make that Sloppy Joe, and there's this, he's like the 3rd generation fire chief, retired fire chief out of Milwaukee, and he tells you what for no matter what. So he came and he just couldn't believe, he actually took some home. He couldn't, because he's always talking about meat, 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 but he couldn't believe it. So that's exactly what it is. It's just taste and texture, and once you get that, people love it. And so he's actually, just from eating the meals that we've been preparing, his wife, who's Filipino, her culture is all vegetables until she met him. They're going back to plant-based because he's been sick, and it's helping him. So it's huge. Yeah. So it's all about taste and texture.
Where again is your place?
Our farm is in Richford, Wisconsin, or Coloma. It's Fresh for Life Organics.
You didn't get those printed, huh?
No, I didn't get those printed. It's with the celery. And
that was his job too. He's supposed to do that part too.
So freshforlifeorganics.com, basically, you can find us. And earlier, so we started fighting these factory farms, and you want to start something else? What are you doing?
No, we're done.
Okay.
See, that's what I'm saying. This was like
but
a
you're making the other thing, right?
We just did.
You're not making the tuna?
This is.
Oh. I don't know what's going on.
See?
It's been a rough show.
Dinner's ready.
It's been a rough show.
So, what time is it? But we wanted questions. See if people had questions about the environment. So, one of the things that'll come up all the time, oh, well, almonds take so much water. You know, when you tell them you're cooking with cashews or almonds. But tell them, Russell, how much water?
Okay, so how much water? How much water to get how do you save 1,999 gallons of water? Close. That's a good one. That's 660. The next time you go for a gallon of milk, take a gallon of water. There are 2,000 gallons of water in a gallon of milk. A cow drinks 30 to 40 gallons of water a day. The corn is a high water crop. And
our friend who's a DNR, he's retired DNR biologist, and I was talking to him, because we lost a lot of trees up there the other day with the storm. I don't know if you guys got that storm, but it was horrible. So he was telling me about the weather pattern. He's seeing it, he's been seeing it for a while, and the old farmers, 30 years ago they said this happened, or however many years ago, back in the 1930s it was, with the Dust Bowl, they're seeing the same weather pattern, and he swears, it's because we're taking down, they downed thousands of acres of forest by our house in the past 3 years to plant corn. And he says corn, he's explaining something with the respiration, I don't know what he's talking about, with the moisture. And it changes the atmosphere. Our trout streams are warming up, but he says he's blaming the corn, and I believe it. I believe it.
Yeah, I think the thing that we'd like to get across here is many of us have seen Cowspiracy, and you hear about the water issues all around the world, but we have them right here in Wisconsin, and that's what we really need to hammer home here. And so the areas in Wisconsin that are suffering the most would be the areas around Door County and Kewaunee County, and they're suffering from water quality issues. If you pump their water out of the ground there, you have one chance in 3 in that water being undrinkable. And luckily we have new technologies, because before the dairy farmers were able to say, well, we don't know whose E. coli that is in that water there, but now we can genetically test it and know that it's coming from cows. So our water there's big problems in Kewaunee County because of this water. They're in an area that's called karst. It means they have broken bedrock, and when you put something on the ground, it goes right through and gets into your water very quickly. It's one of the worst areas that you would ever put dairy cows, and that's where we have the most of them in Wisconsin. What's the largest, the biggest dairy state in the nation? California, right. California has been the #1 dairy state since 1993. And California's had enough. They can't handle the manure, they can't handle the water losses, and the pollution is just too great. So what are we doing here? We're inviting them all here. And we're knocking out small family farms one after another as these big concentration operations come in. The other area that we have a big problem is right in the central stands where the arrow's pointing on the map. That's where we live, and that's where we have water quantity issues. That's where we have a fight up there right now. One of the fights up there right now is to cut down 6,000 acres of pine trees and replace them with corn so that we can open up another 5,000 head dairy. And the DBA, the Dairy Business Association, and the big farmers in Wisconsin have figured out the game. They come in and they ask for 5,000 cows because, believe it or not, that's an easier permit to get. So they ask for 5, and they build their factory farms halfway. They put a milking shed in the middle and a big row for their indoor cows. And there's this empty field on the other side of the milking shed. You don't really know what that's for. But what that's for is 1 year later, there's 5,000 more cows in that shed. And they do that because it's easy, very easy, to have your CAFO increase from 5,000 to 10,000 cows. It's just that initial permit that you need to get. So that's what we're seeing happening as we see these 10,000 head dairies come in. So when they truck out of factory farms, what's the largest amount of things that they truck? What comes from factory farms? Anybody got any idea? What's the #1 product? Manure. Manure. Exactly. Is it 9 or is it 3? I believe it's not 9 times more manure than there is milk that comes out of your factory farm.
And being in this, we're in the country. The population's not that big yet. Right. The Amish are working on it, but so our impact isn't as huge as your impact. What you choose to do, and don't think that, you know, so many people are like, oh, what difference is it going to make if I do this, if I do that? But that's that one saying, how when a butterfly flaps his wings, he causes a hurricane in Brazil. Everything is connected. We're connected to the earth is connected to the animals, and then it's this cycle that goes. So another thing that happens with these factory farms, they have to, with all the corn and everything, it's not just the land, the water, the animals. They displace so many animals. And what they want to do, I keep losing this sweater, they want to kill them. They're always putting something new. They were going to do the sandhill crane hunt. They're still pushing for that because they can, this fall, it goes, the sandhill cranes, they go in the cornfields. Well, you're inviting them. You know, it's these big cornfields. So now they're out for a sandhill crane. Fox, you can kill them as many as you want. I mean, they have some really, really, and it's all because of we're pushing them away, we're pushing them out of their environment. They have no more habitat.
Another big issue we have here is Lyme disease in Wisconsin. How many people have Lyme disease? Oh my gosh. Yes. Stay out of the woods, everybody. But everybody looks at the Lyme disease and they say, oh, we got to watch out for these deer. We got to get rid of these deer. We have Lyme disease everywhere. But the Lyme disease is actually spread by
white-footed mouse.
White-footed mice. So what we've done here is we've wiped out all the habitat, and then we go out and we wipe out all the coyotes, unlimited bag on coyotes. Genie is a member of the Wisconsin Conservation Congress.
But everything I say here is coming from Genie.
Right.
I have to make that disclosure.
Because as a member of the Conservation Congress, she has to say that deer hunting is good. We need to hunt more deer.
I don't have to say anything, but you do learn quite a bit. These hunters are amazing. They know a lot about the environment, and they're learning, because we always make a joke about it, that you know, we both want the same thing. We just have something in the end is different. But they know the environment. They know we have a problem, and they're starting to push. They're not talking about us tree huggers like they were, like they used to. Right. They're starting to see.
When Genie started 3 years ago, they said, you know, what are you doing in here? You know, you're an anti. Right?
Oh yeah, they told me I was an anti. I just told them I keep my enemies close, and from then on we were buddies. So.
Yes. But they have. It's interesting over the last 3 years that we've been there is that we at their annual meetings and their quarterly meetings, you're starting to hear that we're selling too much public land. I know we're pumping too much water. We're converting too many factory farms. Now they're not doing it because they're animal rights people or they're vegans. They're doing it because what they love about Wisconsin is being taken away as these big industrial operations come in. So they're starting to see there is a connection between the animal activists and the vegans. And Genie and I, we go back and forth on this all the time, but generally we don't need to fight hunting. Hunting's going away. If you want to look over the long-term trend of hunting, there's less hunters every year. And it's just not something that people are picking up anymore. They're just changing their habits and choosing not to do that. But these factory farms are an issue, and these growing corn for them and wiping out habitat and lowering lake levels and killing fish and runoff in Green Bay. We have a dead zone that everybody's probably aware of in Louisiana. It happens every year because of all the phosphorus that runs down the Mississippi. But we have a dead zone also in Green Bay. And half of Green Bay on certain days in the summer cannot support life, and it kills all the fish, and it closes beaches in Kewaunee. So this is a problem that's really right here. And
tomorrow there's going to be, tomorrow morning I'm going to meet they're having an Indian what do they call the ceremony? Water ceremony. So they've been really, really fighting, and all over the world. Last year they came, some of the Native Americans came, or Indians came from, they had Mexico, Native Americans from here, and they had Brazil, I don't know, from all over, but they're saying they have this whole belief something's coming together. But all over the world, people are starting to fight for water because they realize that this is a big problem. And one of the things I tell women, especially, when you look at the industry, it's very exploitive to the female species. Whether you're an animal or a human being, it really is. The fact that they call where they inseminate the cows a rape rack is a problem. So if for no other reason than not supporting something that's such a, the social justice is just, it's not there. So that's why I feel it shouldn't be supported.
We ended up on a path, and I'm sure all of you have. We got into lowering our meat consumption because we were fighting this factory farm, and we started saying that, oh my goodness, all of this milk being produced is destroying our environment, and if we want to have water to water our crops, if we want to have our neighbors to have the water in their lakes, we got to rethink this milk. And earlier I put the slide up for Cowspiracy and King Corn. And if you have Netflix, you get dragged down a hole. You pick a documentary and you watch it on factory farming, and you say, oh, okay, that's how it works. This is horrible stuff. And you watch it for 2 hours, and then it says, well, maybe you'll like this one. And then you watch one on water, and then you might watch one on space travel. But there's a lot going on, and you learn so much, and it drags you into so many different things. So that's what happens, and I think that happens with all of us who take that vegan trip. We start for a reason. It's either animals, it's either the environment, or your health.
Does anyone have questions about food and the environment? Or do we answer every question out there?
I got more to say.
Oh, go ahead.
Why not? So the slide, I'm just jumping around our slides here because we're a little running loose here. But so this, in Wisconsin here, this is the nitrate levels in the water, and red is not good. And so anything above 10 parts per billion is considered not safe to drink. It causes blue baby syndrome. So find yourself on the map and see what color the water is around you. What you're looking at is where the concentration of cows are right now, is what you're really seeing. And what that means is all that nitrogen has to get on the soil and spread out. And we have a question. What is blue baby syndrome? So if you get too much nitrates in your system, you can't absorb oxygen. And you are suffocating, basically. So small babies or older people can really suffer from having high nitrates in their water. So you definitely want to get your nitrates checked. So something that you can do fairly easy with UW. You can send in a sample of your water. They got little water bottles to help you. Send it to the college, and they'll tell you where you're at. I highly recommend it.
I go to so many of these hearings, and it's sad because there'll be young people, and we talk about nitrates in the water, and they'll stand up so mad. Well, I've been drinking nitrates in my water my whole life. I don't see. It's like, really? They don't see a problem with it. They think that it's all ridiculous, and it's not.
And actually, we don't have any long-term studies on what 10 parts per billion will do to a person, because it would be unethical to do that. I'll choose you and you and you and give you for 30 years 10 parts per billion of nitrates in your water, and then we'll come back and take a look at you and see where you're at. So they can say that it causes no harm at 10, but there's no studies to tell us that. So it's not recommended that you have that. So anyway, so we have this nitrate problem, and what our DNR does about that is we have a factory farm near us. It was a livestock production area near us, and they had the cows right out on the field, on dirt fields, and they would just bring in hay for them to eat, silage, and fatten them up for beef cattle. And they did this year after year after year, and the nitrates level went to something like 27 parts per billion, making the water undrinkable. They were charged $60,000 for letting cows graze too close to a well, and they were facing a lawsuit. So they went out of business, and the next week they reopened, and they called themselves a new name. And the DNR gave them a higher, it's called an ACL, an alternative limit. I forgot what the C stands for. So the the water's already poisoned above 10 parts per billion. And so if this guy comes in and starts putting manure on the ground or lets cows walk around, they're going to go higher. Everybody knows that. So we don't want to punish this new operator for what the last operator did to the soil. So we're going to give him an alternative limit. His limit's going to be 21. It's like, well, that's double the standard, the safe drinking water standard. And he was the previous person who destroyed the soil. So he was able to walk away from the mess he made and reopen his operation and have a new higher limit, bottom limit for what's considered contaminated in his area. And we fight this a lot. Jeannie was saying that earlier. We have some local people who they're, how many people have dairy farmers in your family from Wisconsin? Or anywhere. We all are connected to it. And if you go back a couple of generations, we're even more connected to it. There used to be 140,000 dairy farms in Wisconsin, and now there's less than 10. So then, but at some point, in 1960, I believe there was 90,000 of them. There was a good chance you're related to a dairy farmer. So it's very hard for people to come down hard on them, because it's like, wait a minute, that's my uncle did that work, my grandfather did that work, it's wholesome.
Saying there is a reduction of farms, but is actually the size because of the increase in
Smaller
size?
family farms, right.
So is the size still there?
What's happening is in California, where they produce the most milk, they only have 2,000 dairy farms, because 99% of them are capos. They have 5,000 or 10,000 cows on them. So what we have happening here is the same thing. We're on that path. And there's a good chance that we will get down to 2,000 dairies, because we have around 300 capos right now, and then about 9,000 dairy farms. And we're losing more than a dairy farm a day. We lost 430 last year or so, it was some number like that. So we're going to turn into we're going to turn into an industrial operation to produce dairy. And even though dairy consumption is down, milk consumption is down, we are convincing the rest of the world to drink milk. We're convincing China to drink milk, who traditionally did not drink milk. All of Asia to drink milk, eat cheese, have pizzas.
And when we first came here, we thought, well, the Amish, and I talk about the Amish a lot because we live in the middle of an Amish community, and they're very wonderful people. So we tried to tell them, you guys are powerful in numbers. You guys are powerful. Oh no, we don't cause trouble. We don't cause. So the other day, one of the girls calls me. She goes, Jeannie, where do we sign? I'm like, what are you talking about? She goes, well, remember that my father's been dairy farming for so long. Now he's having problems. And I said, well, we tried to explain that to you. If you don't fight back with these factory farms, they will, there's too much milk. And the small guy goes under, and that's what's happening. And if I'm not mistaken, it was back in the 80s. I forget the guy's name, Mike McCabe. Somebody had told me that. So many farmers were committing suicide. They have a suicide hotline here in Wisconsin for farmers, because they had farmed in their family for generations, and they're all losing it overnight.
I'll cut in here a minute. So we're both members of the Farmers Union, and we were at the annual meeting this last in the Dells about a month or so ago, and we need different crops in Wisconsin. We need to think differently. And if you go to the Capitol and you go look up in the dome, there's a painting way in the tip of the dome, and it's the resources of Wisconsin. And if you look up there is no dairy cow, there's no gallon of milk, there's no cheese. What they represent agriculture for, the Capitol's 100 years old this year, what they represented agriculture was with wheat. That was the product 100 years ago. That was the agricultural product of Wisconsin, the natural resource. So we've changed before. We grew wheat and we destroyed the soil, and we had to come up with something else. And I looked online. I'm trying to figure out when did we start putting America is Dairyland on our license plates. And I can't get a real handle on it, but we didn't have it on in the 30s, we didn't have it on in the 40s, but somewhere along the line, the marketing people of the dairy business, the large dairies, figured it out that if we just get people to sign on this stuff and wear cheese on their heads when they root for football games, we can do whatever damage we want and they'll support us. And that's where we're at. We really have to understand the damage that we're causing and say we can't support this product. Okay.
Okay, you ready? I found the page. So this is a really good book. We tried to get him to come here this year for the Vegan Fest, but we'll get him next year. So these are a couple of bullet points I wanted to read, because when I read them, I'm like, what? So global warming, climate change, is caused by the production of methane, nitrous oxide, and carbon dioxide, not by carbon dioxide alone. Global warming is also caused by destroying trees and vegetation that regulate carbon dioxide and oxygen, and that's what we're doing with the corn. Global warming is just one small component of global depletion. Methane is 23 times as powerful as carbon dioxide, and nitrous oxide is 310 times as powerful as carbon dioxide for their global warming potential. 40% of methane and 65% of nitrous oxide produced by all human activities are from livestock. Rainforests are the lungs of our planet, producing over 20% of the Earth's oxygen. Rainforests take millions of tons of CO2 out of our atmosphere and store it in the soil. 70% of our rainforests have been slashed and burned in order to raise livestock. And there was a nun that was, her mission was in the Amazon. I believe it was the Amazon. It's in Cowspiracy, yeah, and they killed her. She was fighting for the Amazon. And the beef cattle industry shot her in the middle of the day with no remorse, killed the woman. 55% of our fresh water is being given to livestock. Over 70% of the grain in the United States is fed to livestock. It takes 10 to 20 gallons of water to produce 1 pound of vegetable, fruit, soybeans, or grain. It takes over 5,000 gallons of water to produce 1 pound of meat. 1 pound of vegetables, fruit, soybeans, or grain is healthier for you to eat than 1 pound of meat. During every 1 second of time, just in the United States alone, 89,000 pounds of excrement is produced by the chickens, turkeys, pigs, sheep, goats, and cows raised and killed for us to eat. 1 acre of land is used for vegetables, grain, and/or legumes, produces 10 to 15 times more protein than if devoted to meat production. Over 30% of all usable total land mass on Earth is used by livestock. Over 80% of all arable agriculture land in the United States is used for or by livestock. 6 million children in the world will die from starvation this year, and 1.1 billion people in the world are considered malnourished or suffering from hunger. And part of that is we're malnourished, but in the opposite direction. We consume so much junk food that we're malnourished as well. But so many people, you hear them being displaced, you hear about the wars, but when you follow the money and follow the path of what's happening, they're pushing them off the land that they've been on for all the generations because they're using it to raise livestock. So that's why a lot of people, a lot of these wars that's going on right now is because of that, of our choice of eating meat.
Okay, I'll bring it back to Wisconsin again. So this is a billboard that they put up in Kewaunee County, DATCAP, which is the Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection here in Wisconsin, won't let you sell raw milk. And we're vegan, so we don't want to drink raw milk anyway. We'll drink cashew milk. But they will let you be sprayed with raw manure. And this is what we're doing in Wisconsin too, is we have to get rid of all this liquid manure, and all of our corn crops have irrigation above them, and they want to get rid of this. They come to us and we say, you know, you got to quit spreading all this manure. In the spring, it's all running off when it rains. And they have to empty their manure lagoons just before winter, and there's no crop on the ground, and it just runs off during the winter or when the snow melts in the spring. And they said, well, we just need to put this manure on while the crop is growing, and then everything will be okay. So they want to pump the liquid manure through the irrigation. And they do. And I'm not saying they want to, they do. And they studied this last year to see, you know, can we do this? How safe is it? They had the DNR study it. And the DNR came up, they tested it at 4 or 5 farms around the state here and said, okay, it's an acceptable practice. As long as the wind's not blowing more than 15 miles per hour, as long as, you know, the humidity is above this level, and as long as this or that is happening, you can do it. So our neighbor called me the other day. He's a big potato and vegetable grower. And he said, I just want you to know that manure that was being spread the other day wasn't me. And I said, well, I know it wasn't you, it was the other guy. And he goes, well, there was talk around town that it was me. And I said, well, I know, it was the other guy. And so then we ended up talking about this spray irrigation. And we talked about growing crops and the trouble that he has, because it's a real battle. I mean, he's trying to feed his family, I understand that. He's got a business that he wants to keep going, and so the only real product that you can grow here is corn that you get paid for. So he grows corn, and if you grow corn, you gotta put nitrates on it. You have to put nitrogen on it to grow. So he said, you know, I have to add chemicals to get this stuff to grow, fertilizers. I put it through my overhead. He goes, but I don't use liquid manure. And we talked longer, and he goes, well, you know, if the wind's blowing more than 5 miles an hour, whatever you're spraying on that field is leaving. So here's a farmer who knows when it affects his cash, when it affects his pocketbook, when he's buying chemicals, buying fertilizer to grow corn, he's not going to turn that on if the wind is blowing more than 5 miles an hour. But if you're trying to dispose of manure, and you don't even care where it lands, it can blow 15 miles an hour. So that's what we have here. So the other thing that's amazing is, and you can drive from south, you know, from the Illinois border, and the storm will blow up, and the sky will darken as you pass Madison here, and you'll see the whole, you know, on the left side of 39, all the dirt on the left side of 39 moving to the right side of 39. I mean, how many people have seen that? It's just amazing. We've killed the soil. It has no life in it. We put pesticides on it to kill everything that will grow, herbicides on it so that we can grow corn. And it ends up just being dry dust. And we put corn seeds in it, and then we throw on fertilizer. And there's nothing to grab that fertilizer except that plant, and somewhere between 50 or 80% of that fertilizer runs off into our drinking water. But we pump it on. And we have guidelines on how much we should put on the crops, but the farmer always errs on the side of high. He errs high because if it's an extra good season, if we have just the right sun, we have just the right rain, the season lasts a week longer, he would like to know that he had enough nitrogen on there that he got a little bit bigger crop. So they err on the side of safety as far as yield. And we just contaminate our soil, and what's left behind is just this dead sand.
Can you
guys know what we're doing to
She's in
improve our
biodynamics.
soil?
She's in the biodynamics, and they use essential oils to heal their soil because they're surrounded by big ag. So she was asking us what we do.
So what we do is we fight a battle because keeping nutrients in that sand is very difficult. Everything wants to run off. So we dug into that pasture that had nothing in it for 15 years or 20 years. The first year we were there with a really weak rototiller that barely even busted the sod, and we threw some plants in there and they grew amazing. We're like, wow, this is really easy. Let's get bigger. So then we went from 27 beds to, I think, 70 beds or something like that, and we put all these beds of vegetables in, and they did okay in the newer ones. And the third year it's like, well, you know, we need more vegetables. Let's go 100 beds. And by the fourth year, we weren't getting anything. You know, because we had just used up whatever was in that soil. And it's really difficult with sand, and especially for not using manures. We don't add any cow manures, chicken manures, we don't use any fish. So, you know, so we're trying to use vegan manures, which is composted plants. So we compost like crazy. So what have we learned over the last 7 years? We're no longer planting 100 beds, and then we went down to 70, and then we went down to 50, and this year we planted 30 beds. And our goal is to use the rest of our soil, the rest of our property to harvest the grass and the plants and compost those so that we have enough energy to grow those 30. So it's similar to what you're doing, we're just not bringing in animals to do that. And we compost a lot, basically.
Yeah, we're getting into mushroom compost.
Yes.
Amazing.
Right.
And then one more question for you guys, if I may.
Sure.
We are looking into building greenhouses. Do you guys grow through winter?
No, we don't. We like to grow outside.
Yeah.
Because our thought is, from what we read, the more stress the plant goes through, the more phytochemicals it produces to protect itself. It can't run away from the sun, it can't run away from bugs, it can't run away from disease, so they use chemical warfare to do that. So they have to they have to fight those sun rays. So they produce chemicals that help them protect those rays. They have to fight off these bugs. They produce chemicals to do that. So, sorry about that. And so the more stress that plant gets under, healthy stress, you don't want it to be dying, the more it's building up those chemicals. And so we choose not to grow under plastic because we're protecting it. So then it's not going to have as many strengthening nutrients in there, the phytochemicals that we don't even know. There's thousands and thousands of chemicals that are inside the piece of broccoli that we don't quite understand, micronutrients. And they all work together. There's symmetry in it, and synergy.
That's why you go to the farm market, go to your neighbors, because everybody grows way too much and they want to give it away, and freeze it. Nothing like a frozen bell pepper in the middle of winter. But just collect all you can and save it, because it is good to get it right out from the sun. You don't, the hoop house stuff is not, I don't believe it's healthy. Right. Well, it's science, they tell you.
Right, so you'll get, you know, and it's tough because you can't, we don't know all those micronutrients and we don't know what we're missing, so we choose to grow them outdoors. And it's a little more difficult, but the tomatoes do well. Radishes, you know, if they're out there, as soon as the sun starts shining too much, then they're going to go to seed and you have to plant new ones. And we found a different spot on our farm where it gets only partial sun to grow the greens, because when we grow them out in the big field, they just bolt right away and just turn bitter. So, you know, it's just a matter of looking at your land and seeing what's available and what.
It's a lot like Green Acres. He was a banker before, so when you go and when you come to our farm and watch, you're like, oh, it's like, it is. But I think we're almost out of time.
We're almost out of time. Someone walked by with a 5-minute sign, so I think now there's even another sign. Maybe it's like, get out of here.
So any other questions?
Oh, one more.
What's your tip to keep the organic farm food crop without the herbicide or pesticide?
What do? We have a lot of beneficial habitat. So we grow a lot of flowers and things that bloom real early. So we have birds that come in and say, oh, they see the dandelions growing and all the early flowers we have. And they say, this is a great place to be. You know, let's move in here. And I take my tomato plants out of my greenhouse, which is my basement, and I put them on a board underneath the tree outside until they can harden off a little bit. And I noticed a bird came down and it sat on the branch above my 400 tomato plants were out there, and every now and then it would just dive down and grab a worm out of those tomato plants. And these were my seedlings that were in my basement, and then fly up into its nest, and then come back down and sit on that branch again. And I went there and I went through all my plants trying to find, where is he finding these things? But that bird worked all day pulling those worms off of there. So we work on making habitat so that we get natural help from the birds, from other insects. We don't use, if you use pesticides, you kill all bugs, even the ones that are helping you, getting rid of the bad bugs. I mean, if you have a bug problem, you have an imbalance is what you have. You don't have enough warriors out there knocking them down. So that's basically what we do. We go out and we kill, we're vegans, but we go out and we kill potato bugs. So I'm sorry about that. But we kill the potato beetles, and this is how you do it. So anyway, we have to wrap it up because we have another speaker coming. Thank you.
You know what? Thank you guys for being so patient. We've never done this before, so I really appreciate it. I should have picked a harder meal.